Der Kleisenberger, man say a hit Perek.
Okay. Rabbi say Hilchos Shofar is a v'lulav Perek Shmini, right? Perek Tes. What page are we in the?
I don't have it.
What is this? The Ches?
Perek Tes, yeah.
323.
Page 323. Abbas mean these four species, right? Shehein lulav, the hadas, no the esrei, the lulav, the hadas, the and the esrei. Shahil echad hem yavish. If one of them was dry out, in which case it's not considered hodr anymore. It's not considered beautiful. Ay guzzle, or it's stolen, like you're still stolen by force. Ay garner, it's stolen by trickery. I feel even if the owner was miyayish, he doesn't anticipate the possibility of getting it back yet. In which case, you might argue that the person who has it actually acquires the item. So the din is so we'll see in a second. These are all cases are all puzzles. Let's explain one at a time. If it's dried out, it's not considered hodr. It's not considered beautiful. If it's stolen or if it's robbed, then there's a principle of mitzvah b'va avera. That's a problem. So you're not allowed to do a mitzvah through an avera, therefore it's not kosher. Now another problem is that you have to own the four species. You have to own the dal minyan. If you steal it, it's not yours. Now if you steal it and you make a change in the item, at that case, at that time you owe. Now you have to return the money to the person you stole from, but the item itself, even though you owe its value, belongs to you now. So, for example, you can make it hektish in theory. So in that case, you might argue that you yates it, but the truth is because of mitzvah b'va avera factor, the pashas is still not yates it. But that's what he says. Even after the person gives up hope of getting it back. So even though the person has despaired getting it returned to him, the din is that you're not yates it. Either because it's not considered yours, or because even if it's yours, it's a mitzvah b'va avera. Or if it came from a tree in Ashera that people worship as a avodah zarah. And over there, the problem is that it's disgusting because it's worship of avodah zarah. Now he says, even though the person was mevatel da Ashera, and the pashtum are a Jew, because when a guy is mevatel da Ashera, a guy says he kicks the tree, he spits on the tree, does something to mevatel it, and afterwards you pick the asset from the tree, the pastor should be okay because a guy can mevatel their own avodah zarah. So over here, the guy is talking about a yid, or you could say even if it's a guy, but it's a problem, it's mobs. Even though it's technically speaking not avodah zarah anymore, you can make esrog jelly out of the esrog, and it's kosher, but for mitzvah, maybe not. Okay. Different ways of learning around movie. If it was a city that you have to destroy the entire city because everyone became avodah zarah. All these examples are possible. It's possible for each one for the various reasons, as you explained. If one of these daled minim was of avodah zarah, meaning the pashas, it wasn't worship, but it was a tree that belonged to avodah zarah. So it was in the yard of the church. They have a hadasim bushes or esrog tree. You shouldn't take it because it had a shaykhs avodah zarah. If you used it, yater because it wasn't mamish worship. That's what Pasha the question comes down. Hoya komush, if it was if it was like wilted, it was dry, it was wilted. The gamal Levi wasn't completely dried out yet, so it has some moisture. Kosher is kosher. But if it's a time where there's a difficult situation, you don't have other daled minim like back in the day when there was no you couldn't fly them overnight from Italy. B'shas sakana, or at the time of danger, therefore you couldn't easily fill the mitzvah wherever you wanted. You could kind of grab whatever opportunity came your way. So lulav hayavish kosher, a lulav that's dry is kosher. The other minim, if it's dry, it's not kosher. Now, what's together of dry exactly? So different versions say different things. The Rambam is the most makel. He says it's not considered yavish unless it crumbles when you squeeze it. Other people more they say no. Once it starts fading from green to more white, that's already considered yavish. But whatever the definition is a lulav were more makel regarding dryness, and the other three were more mach. Halacha base. Esrog shel arlo, the esrog of a tree that was in the first years of planting. And of course, you now eat the fruit. It's shaped like chazer. Mishal truma tomeo, or for his truma, right? You have a crop. You have to take truma for a to a kohen. But it became tamei. So truma which came tamei is not allowed to be eaten. It's a chiyuv misa neshamayim. Mishal tevel, or it was the crop. You did not yet separate truma from it. Pasul. All these cases are pasul. Since you're not allowed to eat it, so therefore, it says in the pasul creates other beautiful fruit. If the Torah says you're not allowed to eat it, in fact, you have to actually burn it, then you can't call it a pri. What if it's the type of produce where we have a suffix if it was separated truma or maisis correctly or not? which means basically that the Esther crop belonged to what we call an Amor. It's a person who can't be trusted to be particular with taking terms of Maisis. So that's kosher. Why? Because the halach is that since the Chacham said we have to take Truma or Maisis a second time, or possibly the second time, if it was the first time. If not, it's the first time, to ensure that it was taken correctly. So it's Chima D'Arbanan. So it's only also D'Arbanan. So in that case, the Chacham said that for a poor person, they're allowed to be making, they're allowed to eat it without taking Truma and Maisis. Poor people, they have to get whatever they can. And so therefore, why is it kosher for me to use the Esther just because in theory a poor person can use it for Esther jelly without taking Truma and Maiser? Technically speaking, it's possible for the person who wants to make the bracha on the Esther to declare all of his items as ownerless. Now he's poor. He's allowed to eat the mine. So that means that the Esther is not essentially Esther, it's just circumstantially Esther. I have too much money for me to be allowed to use this Esther. So if I mafka on the chasam, I become poor in theory, I could use the Esther. So because it's not Esther the Etzim, it's just circumstantial, therefore for the mitzvah it's okay. So even though I can't eat it, I could make the bracha. Esther, I could use it for the dal mitzvah. Actually say bracha. Yeah. Esther shall truma tahira. If it's Esther that's truma, that goes to the kohen, but it's tahar. So the kohen can eat it. We shall ma'aser sheni. We shall learn more of ma'aser sheni, which is of course the second ma'aser you take after you give the first ma'aser to the Levi. You take away the second ma'aser, and in the first, second, and fourth and fifth year of the Shema cycle, you have to take travel Yerushalayim with that ma'aser and eat it dafki Yerushalayim. In the third and sixth year, you would give it to a poor person. Lo yito, you shouldn't use it for the mitzvah dal. The problem is like this. The Rambam is explaining over here about the truma. If the esig is truma, what's supposed to happen to it? The kohen is supposed to use it. If it becomes tamei, you can't use it. You have to burn it. You're not supposed to be metamet truma if you can avoid it. It's very common to soak vLulav in water and to make sure, like flowers in water. You just make sure they shouldn't wilt. Now, if the vLulav is wet and touches the esig, now the esig is called mushal kabatum. Now, once it becomes wet, if it touches a dead body or a sheretz, it can become tummy. Before it gets wet, it can't become tummy. Now that it got wet, it can become tummy. So you using the esrog without midden, chances are I'll get after vLulav, and now you're going to make it possible to become tummy. So you're putting truma in a situation where it might become truma tamei, therefore you shouldn't use it. The reason why you can't use ma'aser sheni, or you should not use ma'aser sheni, even in Yerushalayim, is because okay, I'm not sure what the reason why for that is. Possibly because since you can't use it everywhere, you shouldn't use Yerushalayim either. You can't even eat it anywhere except Yerushalayim, so you shouldn't use it Yerushalayim itself as well. If you did use it kosher against kosher, because essentially the esrog is not the etzem aser, just Yerushalayim. Okay, you're not allowed to eat it anywhere else except Yerushalayim. So therefore, even Yerushalayim, you shouldn't eat it because you might come to use it. Sorry, not you shouldn't use it because you might come to use it outside Yerushalayim, where it's not allowed to be eaten and therefore it shouldn't be used for a mitzvah, ideally. And as far as the truma goes, again, the whole reason why you're not supposed to use an esrog, which is truma, is because you might make it tamei. But that's again lechatchila. But yeah, if you did use it, the mitzvah counts. vLulav shenek tam reish. You have a vLulav, the tip gets cut off, which Pashish means that, again, different ways of looking over here. Pashish means the center leaf, that tip gets nipped off. So that's not considered a hadar anymore. And it says again, creates hadar, a beautiful fruit. And we learn that's esrog, but it applies to all four of the minim. So therefore, possible. Nizdak, if it splits, and again, the Pashish talking about the center leaf, it's split. If the two sides are distant from one another, actually, until the point that it seems like two different lavim. Again, that doesn't give you exactly a definition how far it has to be. Most poskim say that if it gets split visibly one tefach down the spine, the top, that's a very problem. Possible. There is an opinion that if it's only a tiny drop split, that it's possible. We don't. That's a chiluk. Okay, if the esrog is shaped like this. So you hold with the shedder towards you like a hunchback. You should be like a hunchback. Possible, it's possible. That's not considered beautiful. It's the opposite, like the Arab sword. It's backwards, like carrot. So then that's cautious. That's cautious. That's a normal way of growing, and the possible say that does not detract in any way from the hiddur. If it veers it's like to the right or to the left, possible in that case it's possible. What if you have, sometimes after Sukkah, you see that the naturally the leaves start to sort of separate. There's cracks that form on the spine, dividing where each leaf comes down. So that starts happening. It's still kosher. Different to olive, if the leaves become open to the point that that they droop down from the spine of the lulav, like the leaves, like the top of the date palm puzzle. It's possible. Look over here in this picture. You have the two examples. So the top one is still kosher, but the bottom one's already puzzle. That's the difference. Now, the healthy, the natural way that the leaves grow is like this. When they grow, they grow two at a time. Every lulav leaf, you can split it and make two out of it. When you make the rings, you know that, yeah? So we're doing a gabon, and from the back, they're connected. So at one point, they're connected. So you split it open, then you have to actually separate it by that back part. The gavin kolishni all in the back part of the lulav where it's connected, that's called the tiyamis. What if the tiyamis is split? Now the Rambam here might mean the center leaf, or he might mean the majority of all the leaves on the lulav. It's not clear what he means, but I think most places would say both of them are possible, or other situation. So that case is possible. All of achas. What if the lulav grew in a way that each one of them was separate? They were naturally separated. They weren't like two that are stuck together. One at a time. They didn't. So then, that case is possible. That's considered full. That's not considered a normal way of the lulav to grow. Now, most lulavs, the way it works is it's like the leaves like this, right? So the top one goes almost to the top of the next one. What if you have it in a way where you have each one of them is under the other one? So the basically instead of overlapping very much, it's almost not overlapping at all. So if the top of the lower leaf reaches on top of the bottom of the next one, so there's some overlap. Ultimately, the entire spine is covered by leaves, even though it's not a very thick layer, because you have each one barely coming over the other one. So instead of there being a quarter of an inch between the leaves, you have the full height between the leaves, almost the full height. So kasha is kasha. However, if the top of leaf number one doesn't yet get to the bottom of number two on top of it, then in that case it's possible.
Just to reach the ikre or to overlap somewhat?
It sounds like you have to overlap it to drop at least, because otherwise if it doesn't,
if it doesn't overlap it, then you're not going to cover the sugar.
Right. So I guess if it reaches mamish to it, if it doesn't overlap it, it's still covered. So that's not exactly. That's like already splitting hairs. It has to be that the shadow is covered completely. Yeah. All right. Hadas shenik domination. You have the hadas. You have the myrtle, and the top of the hadas gets nicked off. Oh, sorry, 1 second. Yeah. So the top of the hadas gets nicked off. Kosher is kosher. Now, the Pasha I was talking about a case where the top leaf has fallen off, but not the actual piece of the stem. Or if I care that the stem fell off, that's not a problem because the leaf is covering it. Okay, so whichever way you want to find it, put it down. It's kosher. What does he say over here in the Rabbi? There's a go off the Rabbi over here. He says something about Ruach HaKodesh in his Beis Medrash.
The lino should pesel kistam mishnuseinu.
Right. So we have basically Ruach HaKodesh Beis Medrash, and we decided it's possible. That doesn't like that yet. So that's why the Machaber apparently quotes Adam. The Rambam says you mach like the Rabbi is possible. Okay. And some say that after the Rambam is talking about a case where that the psul of the Rabbi is where the branch is cut off, but the leaf is talking about a problem. Okay, good. Now, no shudrev all of it. Most of the leaves of the hadas fall off, which happens very often. Yom Tzayim, by the way. Yom Tzayim, you're shaking people, it's windy, especially if you're on sitting in the boardwalk, and you emit the law, you should make a bracha, you move someone, you realize that all leaves are falling off. So, if you go on Tzayim with the lulav, you have to have 7 sets of hadas, and I don't see another way to do it. So otherwise, you can have a possible.
They don't treat it like a lulav; they treat it like a parah. So they shake.
Yeah. No, most of these fall off. Which means you have at least somewhere on the height of the hadas, you have 3 leaves. Not sometimes 3 leaves scattered. You have on the around the hadas. You have like 3 leaves surrounding like a ring around it. There's 3 all the way up and down. So you have 3 at each height. You have one place where there's 3 at one floor, one station, right? One level. That's still kosher. What if you have berries on the lulav, like have these natural berries on the lulav leaves, and if there was more berries, I'm sorry, thank you, the hadas leaves, and I'm not sure if more means like berry per leaf or more in quantity or in space, but it's whatever everyone defines. It's more berries in leaves. If they're green, kosher is kosher because it's still hadar, it's the same color. If they were red or black, then it's also because that's not considered hadar. Now, there's a thing that gears to change between our Rambams over here. What is it? If you meet them kosher, if you reduce the amount of berries, it's kosher, you pick the berries off. Now, that's on cholamoid. If the A might if you can't do that. The fish you can massacre, it's like tikkun, it's like making candy because you're making it fine. Oh, but if you're over on Yontif and you took the berries off on Yontif, you're not supposed to because it's tikkun. Shalikt echad. Okay, so somebody else, you shouldn't do it because you're making it for your hadas. Somebody else came along, and he has a hadas in there. Fine, he wants to eat your berries. He takes it to beat. So now your hadas is fine. Is it kosher? That is kosher. Now the chayre, if you did it yourself, if you did it yourself, also it's kosher. The Rambam gives an example where the chayre it's a lechatchila because that guy he's not doing it for the second the hadas. He's doing it. He wants the berries. That's even better. So that's for sure. Okay, now Rabbi gets one line. This is like the Rebbe's rule, right? Rabbi is covering the hadas. So Rabbi shitna risha sheira. The Rabbi that the top is picked off is kosher, even though it's not a problem for the Rabbi. For the hadas, the problem. The Rabbi is not a problem with the Rambam. Different to Allah, psula, and the halacha I think we pass is not kosher. The Rambam is kosher. Different to Allah, if the leaves are parts, they burst, which means either they're split. Or it can mean that they droop down low, whichever way, like the post can say both ways, are psul. In that case, both of them are possible. Zayin. Esther, if you have an Esther, that has a thorough hole, which when the Rambam means pashut shudei, it's through and through one side to the other. So possible, it's possible. The emuful is not through and through, and according to the Rambam, meaning even if it reached the center where the seeds are, but it's not through one side to the other. So if the hole was the size of an iser, which is a small coin, which is the size of 4 barley coins. So a yaser or larger puzzle, then the hole is postulate. And this is often a case where the hole doesn't actually detract from the iser quantity, it's mass, it's just a hole. Chaser culture, missing a part of the iser. So then, like for example, you take a screwdriver in the iser, lav daf is a part missing. You just made a hole, and now you kind of squish the parts to the side. Nothing stuck out the other side. So it's kosher. But if it's actually missing a part, so then kosher kosher, then it's possible. Nital dada if the pitum gets picked off, that's the top, the small piece on top. There's a crown. Possible, it's possible. Nital eight shoot. You'll see soon that's top of the first day only. If the stem, the ukit, which is where it hangs the tree off on the other side of the esrog, and that's completely missing, and all you have is a void in that spot. Possible, it's possible because that's not hadar either. Of course, if it's a part of that part missing, is fine because you have to cut off the tree somehow. So as long as you leave it enough that it's completely covering the actual body of the esrog itself. This is interesting. The Rambam says if you peel off the entire external peel, it's not considered like it's lacking anything. It's green as it was. So I guess a very, very thin external peel. I've never tried this, but I guess you can peel the esrog in a way that you're peeling something, and yet it's such a superficial, thin layer of peel that doesn't change the color of what's under it, apparently. It's the initial yodek, which means green, but in this case obviously it's yellow. Commercial biosity has its natural color. In Niklaf Kula, possible. If you did the entire surface of the acid, then it's possible. But if you Nisha Menokol Kosher, if as long as the drop of its original, most external shell is remaining, then it's still kosher.
Why is there a problem?
I guess not considered hadar or considered chaser. I'm not sure. I didn't say why. I'm not totally sure.
Okay.
Ches. Esrog shu tafuach, an esrog which is inflated because you soaked in water. After it came off the tree, you soaked in water, and so it got inflated, swollen, waterlogged. Seruach, or it's spoiling, it's decaying, kavush, or it's pickled, which means you soaked it in water for or any kind of liquid for more than 24 hours.
Right, it's chametz.
Whereby you says chametz dafka?
Yeah, kavush chametz.
Oh, kavush chametz. Okay, interesting. So that usually means dafka gets pickled in vinegar. Got it. Yeah. So Shulchan Aruch Taka.
Yeah, if there's no vinegar, then it's tapuach.
Yeah.
If it's plain water, it's tapuach.
Yeah, lavdav. It could be. What could be? The esrog doesn't grow in size because you soak in the water. But according to the other definition of kavush, the fact that it's in water 24 hours, that's a problem. So you put your esrog at the first day you on Shabbos. You put your esrog, your lulav. I mean, the chayes applies to all the 4 men. Put the lulav in water, and let's say it's a tall vase which covers the hadas naravis. Then the second day up, if you take the lulav out of the water, there could be a problem because it's been in water 24 hours. Now, if
They
it's
used
not,
to do that all the time.
yeah, that's why Takin says that's important to be aware of this.
Yeah, but only by esrog is the problem. But not this.
So this is talking about the esrog, yeah. But the problem with kavush applies. I think it applies to all 4 except
But
the
this is kavush is at b'chametz.
right. But you says chametz, right, yeah.
I'm saying no. He means in the
In
Saddam.
parentheses.
Okay, so didn't you say it?
No, it's not from the Rambam. But I'm saying.
Oh, it's the printer's words.
Yeah, he
Okay.
gives pirushim there.
Right. Okay. So then right. That's based on the Shulchan Aruch.
And shalach is b'bushim.
Right.
Because the Arabas in the Beis Hamikdash,
The Magen Avraham says that kavush means any liquid 24 hours. So I'm not sure why he's so sure about that. Could be that's how the Beis understands the Rambam. So it makes sense to understand the Rambam that way. But the Magen Avraham, at least the halacha, or could be even how he's shot in the Beis and the Rambam means any liquid. But okay, fine. Either way. Sorry, what? Say again?
No, because we learned yesterday about the Arabas that they used to bring Beis Hamikdash. Besides the regular Arabas, that they used to put it in a bucket with water.
Ah, right. But that was 24 hours?
I don't know.
Could be next morning was by the time it was in the Erev did water, the next morning they took it out to use it. So, okay, good. Shachar or for the esrog is black. Lavan or it's white. Numar or it's spotted. The Yara kakarti or it's green like a very green, like a leek. Because Yara could be like yellow or it could be like green. So green like a leek. Possible in that case is possible. Yidla, because that color is not considered a hugger. If you grow the esrog in a mold, so for example, the esrog another color. So you have the esrog very small, put like a star-shaped metal around it, and it grows into that mold. Now it's star-shaped or whatever, different shape.
Square, right?
Square, anything, yeah.
Like China, they have like box watermelon.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Square
very
watermelon.
interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so
So
possible.
instead transfer it and
Yeah.
store it. Or
Very interesting.
imagine a round thing, so hard to store. You have squares, you could store it on a pallet. And that's
They had like a twist and it grows into it.
It comes square, yeah.
Very interesting. We gotta Google that one tonight.
I'll show you a picture.
I've
believe
never
it.
heard of this.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's like a Chinese or Japanese.
Colors, it's for shofar now.
That's like a Jewish thing
What?
to invent. Square watermelon.
Different colors.
So possible, that's possible because that's like considered. It's like a different shape. It's unnatural. It's not considered hard. So can be also, but if the fuss, this is a great idea. Like if it still looks like an esrog, that's kosher. Even though it's daf and daf means layers. I'm not sure what that means exactly. Kosher is kosher. This is interesting. You could, if you want, see if the esrogim sellers were. I see.
Unbelievable.
Photoshop. But here's the thing: the esrogim sellers could take a mold exactly the perfect lemons giddle. Put it on the esrog when it's small. It'll grow into that perfect. You have a perfect esrog. You have a good lemon. I'm surprised no one thought of that. No? Okay, anyway. So it's kosher. The tiyoim, excuse me,
Here he says in parentheses the esrogim that are connected.
yeah, thank you. So two esrogim that are connected together. Two esrogim that just happens that they grow like on the tree attached to each other. There's a book that has all these things in pictures. Boiser or an unripe esrog, kosher, both kosher. Now it doesn't mean unripe that's still green now, which that would be a problem. We said before, it's been like a leek, but it's somewhat immature. Good. This is like a place specific thing. A place where the esrogim over there are slightly of a black color. Sharon's kosher. It's mashma's that's kosher over there, not everywhere else. Only in that location because there it's considered other apparently. If they were very dark, like a person with black skin, it's possible. In that case, they're possible everywhere, even the place where they grow naturally, not considered hadr. Says Rashi in Sukkah says even in Africa, that's how they grow. I guess the same reason why the people with skin are black, because this way they get so much sun, it has to change colors to adapt to the amount of sunlight. Doesn't damage the.
But they use green Australian.
Amish green Australian.
That's because it's not green.
Okay, I don't know. I never saw. I guess if you look at the picture,
No,
they pick
some people are particular not to take too green.
Yeah,
You shouldn't have to take.
It's supposed to be
Shopping apples.
It's supposed to be like no.
Leave it overnight.
It's supposed to be yellow like wax, like beeswax. That's the ideal color. Yeah, that's if it you have to make sure it could turn yellow. That's what they do with the apples in my system. If that can't turn yellow, it's a problem. We said if it's green like a leaf, that's something that's possible. Okay, test now. The cases where we say all these cases, it's not hadr, it's because of mum, it's stolen. So in that case, it's beyond Mishnah. It's only the first day of Yom Tov, which is the chiyuv of taking down is the Raisa. Al Yom Tov Shenim Shar Yom, the second day of Yom Tov, and the other day of Yom Tov, Hakel Kosher, and it's kosher. So, for example, Esther that loses the pitum is kosher the whole sukkah, except the first day. We said it's possible because of the zara. When now he eat like in the case where it's true, but it's tummy, for example, or it's orla. Being the intervention, maybe shayom possible. In that case, it's possible every day, even the first day. Even not the first day. Yud. Ain other means to be intervention like the vLulav. The first day of Yom Tov, he not eats the mitzvah with the lulav belonging to somebody else. Sheish you borrow from him. Unless he gives it to you as a gift. Now, so he gives it to you as a gift, but he makes a t'nai in matana. That the t'nai is you have to give it back. Right? You can make all kinds of t'nai. You claim to this, I'm going to ask you to travel to Italy with me. You claim this on. So here I'm giving you some matana. The t'nai is you have to give it back to me. Then he gives it back to him. If he gives it back, he doesn't give it back to him, then the gift wasn't legitimate. He didn't do the condition. Because the matana which you give, and the conditions you guys to return it, they have to consider matana. Therefore, it's yours. If doesn't give it back, because it's like you stole it. They know you shouldn't give it to a cotton and tell him to give it as a matana. I'm asking back to you. A cotton can be koine, then I tell you it can be maked with somebody else. Once he takes it, so the cotton takes it, it's his, gives it back, it's not yours. So therefore, unless you don't plan on taking it back to the cotton, or unless you already did move nested the first day and you have enough of the other days, you shouldn't use the cotton.
When the Rebbe would give the move nested to Harlem, you tell him.
Yeah, right, exactly. And if Shem ideally you're supposed to do that. But the thing is that it's considered an assumption, whatever. I try to do it. I tell them that listen, this is a gift on condition you return. I just say that. It's a little funny to them, but this way I said it. They know what it means. All right. The echad halulav, the echad called me the mi'ara min al-shabai, and this applies to lulav in all the 4 minim. If one of them was borrowed, the first day, you're not the okay. You have two people that buy an esrog lulav b'shutfis, right? Which is very common back in Europe, right? The whole city bought a lulav esrog together because they couldn't, they were lucky if they had one even. Most cities had two, right? The Rav had his own, and there was most cities had two. The big gavir of the town had his own lulav esrog, right? And the Rav had one, and the whole community would make a bracha on the Rav's lulav esrog. So none of them are yet the chiyuv with on the first day. Each one has to give the other, so it has to be yours, mamash, and only yours. It's not if it's partially yours. So he has to give it to him as a matana gemura. He gives it back to him as a matana gemura, and then that's how they're right? The brothers who inherited, let's say, their father, and they buy an esrog with the money from the estate. Not le'achad ben esrog yatzabai, and one of them. 1 second, I'm sorry. Yeah, so they buy an esrog from the estate of the money from the estate. Not le'achad ben esrog yatzabai, one of them takes the esrog to get his mitzvah on the Dal minim. Again, it applies to all 4 minim. So the question is, it belongs to everyone, but he's saying, I want this, and they bought the esrog for whatever purpose. He's saying, I'm taking this to be Yitzhak Dal minim. Is it his, or is everyone? If it's everyone's, not Yitzhak. If it's his, he is Yitzhak. So what determines if it's his or not? If he was able to eat it and no one's going to protest, then he can legitimately say it was his. No one has a problem with that. If someone say, hey, why are you eating that? It belongs to everybody. Then lo yatzi is not Yitzhak. because actually you
You can't really apply the test.
right.
It's to use it.
No, but in theory, so that's the concept exactly. It applies to esrog, any food you buy, right? Exactly. But here, Lav he bought the esrog, in the summertime for whatever purpose, and then comes because he wants to use it. So in our heads, you buy an esrog into the mitzvah. Who buys esrog stammer, right? Okay. Halacha Yud Beis. Sorry, no. If he bought an esrog. If it's that parch, the other guy buys parvish, which is a quince apparently, kind of the apple species fruit. Is a bias. So this guy buys an esrog, he buys a quince. Or they all bought together an esrog and a pomegranate and a quince from the money from the estate. No one's here to the esrog. Unless someone gives somebody simply as a gift. There's the fact they bought it all together. The fact that I bought an esrog, you bought a quince, is an idea that we're all still shutfin all the fruits over here. So obviously they bought all together, it's also shutfis. So therefore, they're not yates unless each one gives the other matana. Even if he eats it, no one's never a problem. The fact that they bought it this way, that we assume that in this case, because they did not divide the estate yet, so the pashtus they want to have everyone divided formally, split up the Yerusha before anybody goes and takes anything themselves. Therefore, the assumption is it's not his personally, and that he's not Yitzhak.
There's a whole concept of yesh breda.
Right. Right. So over here,
you can
it's a
apply.
question of breda really, because first of all, that's what they're bottom right now. Tell you don't say breda. So that's why the first day wouldn't work. Even the second days, I think when there's some money, it's not a concept of breda. It's like it's a little different. It's a question of like it's a kind of how I don't know if you can see breda by money. I'm not sure. I never saw it used in that way.
You can ask this to a question. What happens if a father dies in the middle of Sukkah? So children inherit the esrog, right?
Yeah. So the question, so the they can't use it because it belongs to everybody.
Okay, unless they're makna each to each other.
Yeah, let's get them a ton of right. Yeah. So Allah Yud Beis. Afal P should call by this. Okay, so this is as far as with an esrog goes. Now we're talking about the simcha of Yom. There's just interesting. There's two betlach over here. Okay, Yud Beis. Afal P should call by this mitzvah smech, and even though it's meant to be happening every Yom Tiv, on Sukkahs, on Sukkahs, there's Mikdash, there was excessive joy. Remember, it says not excessive joy, a lot of joy. Remember, we should be joyous before Hashem God for 7 days. Case of what would they do? How would they be happy? Erev Yom Tov Rishon, before Erev Sukkot, how you they would make a place, a Bible show for the women on top. And the men below. They should so they should not mix together. And that was like a balcony area in the Chatzar. That's why that area is called the Ezra's Noshim. They would start being happy, being Sameach. Matzah Yom Tov, that was the first night of Chol Hamoed, which is the second night of Sukkot, because that's when you're allowed to use musical instruments. On Yom Tov you can't. Now, if we assume that the Issa D'Rabbanan of, it says, if we assume that the Issa D'Rabbanan of using musical instruments was instituted in the Bayis Sheni, and it's very possible in Bayis Rishon that they danced with Sheva on the first night with the music, because there was no Issa D'Rabbanan yet. Okay, but I'm talking about in the Bayis Sheni. They would start on the second night. And every single day of Chol Hamoed, they would start rejoicing in the afternoon after they were makriv the afternoon carbon. Smeach, and be rejoiced, so the Sha'ayim, allow the rest of the day with the whole night. We call light the whole night. You give them. How would exactly they rejoice? They would be playing with the flute. They would play with the instruments, a harp, and the cymbal. Every individual, whatever musical instrument he knew how to sing. Those who knew how to sing by mouth, they would sing by mouth. They would dance on the sapkin, and they would clap their hands. And they would also clap. Yeah, okay. And whistle. He translated as letting loose and whistling. Yeah. Everyone as they knew how to. They wouldn't stop singing the song. They would sing apparently they would use the words of of praise of Hashem from Tehillim or from other parts of Tanakh to sing these good. The Simcha Zu Ein Deiche, Loyas Shabbos Yom Tov. This Simcha does not push away Shabbos Yom Tov. In other words, they would not do this on Shabbos and Yom Tov because you can't play musical instruments on Shabbos and Yom Tov.
And how about without the instruments?
So the Chayr they didn't do without instruments, even though the Chayr you could do without. You could just sing, Pashas. I mean, and you could also ask the Chayr. Well, no, I was going to say have a goy play the instruments. That makes sense. Forget it. That was
No.
Because it is because technically speaking, of halacha, playing the instrument is their bottom. Makkah mitzvah. If a guy does it, it's okay. So in theory, if you have a wedding on Friday afternoon, you could have dancing Friday night with goyish musicians, because it's a shvus Makkah mitzvah. Playing instruments is their bottom, and a guy is doing it. So it's a mitzvah. The fellow don't do that, but I'm saying okay, over here wouldn't work out. But okay. So although again, I think, it's a R in the sleeping in the Sukkah Sikha. There's a R where I think it says, or it's mashma that in the Bayis Rishon it could be very likely that assuming this issue the Rabban was only instituted with like mostly sort of the Rabban in the man of Bayis Sheni in the first place of Mikdash on the first night of Yom Tov or on Shabbos or on Shabbos Yom Tov, they did talk about okay. Halacha Yud mitzvah the harbis with the mitzvah to maximize this simcha. Like how you and not every random person or whoever wanted to could participate. And the Gedali Chacham Yisrael, after the great the Jewish people, Rosh Yeshivas, the leaders of Yeshivas, the heads and Chassidim, the Chenim, and the Hashemaisa. There's a whole different explanation of these different terms. The Sikh about exactly the specifics. But they would definitely want you clapping, rejoicing, and singing this Mikdash Sukkah. I will call up the rest of the people, Anashim, men and women, they would come to see and to hear by deriving joy from participating by watching. So the people who actually were actively in the Simcha were Dafka the Gedali Yisrael, and then everyone else watched and learned. Tezvav. Here the Rambam goes to the general principle of Simcha. Ha-simcha shismach adam b'siyus ha-mitzvah, the joy a person has during the mitzvah, ba'avas akel to behen, love of Hashem, that He commanded them. Avodah Gedali, it's tremendous service. Great avodah. Whoever prevents himself from having a simcha, he does all the right things, but he's not a sinful. He deserves to be punished. It says that all these negative things happen. He's not Shav Hashem, your God, the simcha them with joy and goodness of heart. It's not something you didn't serve Hashem. Maybe he did serve Hashem. If he didn't serve Hashem with joy and goodness of heart, that deserves a retribution.
So what does this refer to? The Chacham and Rosh Yeshivas?
No, this is Bechlal. Whenever a Yid serves Hashem,
no, but it's
it
seems like he's referring to this. The Chol Amenei Atzmim Simcha Zu.
No, Zu means the first line of Tesvav, that the Simcha a person has if he does a mitzvah and loving Hashem.
So how did he come into this?
This is Rambam's general. I don't say Mushrosh, who's at the end of halachas. He wants to make this point. This is not about Simcha of Sukkah. It's about Bechlal, the point of Simcha. Whoever is too proud and gives honor to himself in the sense that and he wants to honor himself in this area. He's like, it's beneath my dignity to be simcha in this way. He's a sinner and a fool. Don't seek glory in front of the king. In other words, before Hashem, you're not too important that you can't lose your tie and be Mesameh. Whoever, if I can't, lowers himself and
it says he dances.
Takes himself lightly in this way. Who agadol, that's not the person who's great. The mechubed and honorable. It says this is when he came, he was dancing in front of the Aron, and his wife, Shalom Melech's daughter, is saying that my stub, right? So when the he said that even I hold myself even more lightly, less important than this, to be humble in my own eyes. The greatest honor is nothing except to being rejoicing in front of Hashem. It says, David was dancing, wildly and whistling before Hashem. That's the real way to serve Hashem properly.
That was the source of the Rebbe for whistling.
Yes.
The Rebbe was very upset that nobody knew that David Melch was Mefazer Macharker. Nobody knew how to answer the friend.